I'm pregnant.
I was suddenly told by a colleague who claimed to be my best friend. Her partner turned out to be my fiancé. Feeling unable to work and bothered by the nuisance woman who stole my fiancé, I became uncomfortable at the company and resigned. I never dreamed that a major turnaround in life would await me afterward. My name is Nancy, 28 years old. I work in the editorial department of a certain publishing company's comic division. Though it may sound boastful, I'm quite capable. I have 3 comic artists under my charge. One is a hitmaker for the magazine's flagship series, another is a veteran with passionate fans, and the third is a talented newcomer who seems poised to carry the future of the magazine. They all trust me to handle their manuscripts. The work of an editor primarily involves assisting the comic artists under their charge and ensuring that the manuscripts are completed by the deadline. This includes gathering materials, delivering them to the workplace, and sometimes even brainstorming ideas together with the artists. I believe that comic artists create worlds with their own skills and provide readers with dreams and hopes. In fact, I used to draw comic during my student days. Although I once dreamed of becoming a comic artist myself, I realized I lacked the talent for it. So, I decided to become an editor to help bring comics into the world.
Nancy really loves comic, right?
My colleague and boyfriend, Jason, remarks. We've been dating for about 2 years now, and marriage has been on the table. So it feels like we're engaged, sort of. The job isn't just about sitting at the desk from 9 to 5, and since I often rush to assist the comic artists even outside of work hours, it's challenging to sync up schedules like a regular office worker. Dating someone in the same editing field like Jason makes it easier, though it's a shame we can't find much time for dates.
Nancy is so lucky with her assignments,
remarked Amy, another colleague who started at the same time as me. She used to work on the editorial team for a girls' comic magazine at the same publishing company but had to switch departments because she clashed with a senior female manga artist she was in charge of. While it's true that manga artists can be difficult or eccentric, I believe the issue lies more with Amy herself. She tends to be lax with time, makes a lot of excuses, and has a habit of blaming others. Despite that, she has a cute appearance and seems reserved and shy at first glance, so she was assigned to the same department as me for reasons that might be frowned upon nowadays. Instead of being in charge of female comic artists for girls' comic magazines, it might be better for her to be in charge of male comic artists for boys' comic magazines. I might have luck, but I'm also putting in effort. I want to see good comic from our artists. Does Amy even bother to learn the food preferences and hobbies of your assigned comic artists?
Well, I bring up trendy sweets and stuff.
Not just trendy topics. You need to bring items that match their preferences. Some people don't like sweets.
I've waited for a long time to buy it, but then he said, I've mentioned before that I'm not a fan of sweets, haven't I?
Oh, I remember when you brought that cake last time. You must have brought it because you wanted to eat it. You prioritized yourself over the comic artist you're in charge of?
Well, it's not a big deal, is it? I just wanted to treat myself a bit.
It's not good at all. Buying treats for myself under the pretense of bringing them as gifts. And to make matters worse, she used it as an excuse to wait in line during working hours.
Come on. Not everyone is as passionate about their work as Nancy. I got a bit down too when they said, I wish I had a cute girl like Amy as my editor.
Jason.
I didn't like the lack of seriousness both of them showed towards their work. Still, as we were the only 3 from the same intake who could speak our minds freely, we often went out for drinks together. Amy claims to have a daddy complex, and her current boyfriend is nearly 20 years older than her.
Since my dad passed away when I was young, I'm drawn to older men. They're kind and stable, unlike guys my age.
Hey, saying that in front of a couple like us, who are the same age.
Amy knows that Jason and I are dating. To me, dating someone 20 years older is unimaginable. When I'm 50, they'll be 70. That's not a boyfriend, that's a grandpa. We exchanged light banter like this, somehow reassured that Amy wouldn't become a rival in love. One day, while waiting for a date with Jason, I received a call from Amy, saying she wasn't feeling well and asked if I could pick up the manuscripts instead. I could have refused, but the comic artist Amy was in charge of happened to be someone I've been a personal fan of since their debut. His name is Michael, a man in his mid-30s with talent but hasn't quite had a hit yet. I cancelled my date with Jason and headed to pick up the manuscripts.
Oh? You're Nancy, right? What happened to the usual person?
Even though I had never been in charge of him before, I was happy he remembered my name. Amy isn't feeling well, so I came to pick up the manuscripts instead.
Ah? She's often not feeling well. But is she really that fragile? Is she okay?
I've never heard about Amy having health issues. It seems she sometimes uses being unwell as an excuse and gets turned down for favors. I heard stories about messed up arrangements for signings, bringing fan letters from 6 months ago, and even bringing apple pie despite he having an apple allergy. It was frustrating to hear.
The other day, I asked for some photos of ruins with a fantasy-like atmosphere. And she sent me blurry pictures she found on the internet via email. If that's all she's capable of, then I wouldn't bother asking for favors.
He sighed. I promised to apologize profusely on Amy's behalf and give her a stern warning.
Maybe I'm being treated coldly because my comic isn't popular enough.
He said something so sad, so I confessed. I've been a fan of yours since your debut. I even buy your books and display them on my bookshelf. He was delighted, and Michael said,
Really? Then I'll draw your favorite character for you.
He carefully drew my favorite character in my planner. I was so happy that I forgot my anger towards Amy.
But come on, the artist is so old-fashioned. He even asks for physical materials and prefers handwritten fan letters. Sending fan letters in envelopes is weirder, you know?
When I gave Amy a stern warning, she not only refused to reflect on her actions but also insisted that she did nothing wrong. There are still many traditional artists out there. And there are plenty of fans who write heartfelt handwritten fan letters. Just because you find it bothersome doesn't mean you should slack off on your job.
Geez, Nancy, you're scary.
You see, our job is to assist the comic artists in creating good work. It's not just about interfering with allergies or being a nuisance. It's about being harmful.
But I didn't know. It's not my fault.
That's a lie. Michael said he had communicated properly. Just then, Jason arrived and interrupted the conversation.
What's going on? Seems tense.
Ah, Jason. Nancy keeps saying mean things to me.
She said, making gestures of crying without shedding a tear and pleading with Jason in a sweet voice.
Amy, did you mess up again?
It's not about messing up or making a mistake. I'm talking about your attitude towards work. We don't need an editor who causes trouble for the comic artists.
Hey, that's going too far. Don't blame others based on your own standards.
I never thought my fiancé would take Amy's side. Looking back, I think our relationship was already falling apart at that moment. We had different perspectives on work and different priorities. I should have ended things with Jason then and there, but I still had lingering feelings or thought it was fixable, so I couldn't bring myself to cut ties with him. After that, Amy was removed from being Michael's editor. It was because Michael had spoken to the editor-in-chief about changing editors, but because he didn't want to cause trouble, he didn't tell Amy the truth. Amy assumed I had snitched on her to the editor-in-chief.
How could you? Snitching to the editor-in-chief.
Huh? I just gave you a warning. I didn't snitch.
Then why am I being removed as the editor? The fact that you replaced me is proof enough.
That's right. Michael told the editor-in-chief.
If possible, I'd like Ms. Nancy to be my editor.
This news made me incredibly happy, but it only fueled Amy's misconception that she was removed because of me. Having 4 comic artists to manage seemed a bit daunting to me, so I discussed with the editor-in-chief and decided to assign Amy to handle the Hitmaker comic artist. This artist operates in a production-style format, with plenty of staff handling tasks like gathering materials and event coordination, so there wouldn't be any deadline issues. In reality, the editor's responsibilities would be limited to picking up manuscripts and bringing treats, so I thought there wouldn't be any trouble even if Amy took over. Amy seemed pleased with this arrangement.
It might actually be lucky. Michael isn't that well-known, and a lot of people don't even recognize his name. But from now on, everyone will know him once you mention his name, right?
She was in high spirits, and it seemed like her anger towards me had disappeared, but it actually irritated me quite a bit.
I'm sorry if my request to the editor-in-chief caused trouble with your colleague.
Michael said this to me when he first came to the workplace after I became his editor. I didn't know how the news had spread, but such conversations tend to circulate quickly. No, I'm happy to be your editor. I'll do my best to make up for any trouble Amy caused. Just let me know if you need anything. When I said that, Michael replied,
Thank you. I hate to ask so soon. But could you find an assistant for me? I asked Amy a while ago. But
I thought there should be a limit to not doing any work. I arranged for staff who could draw illustrations that matched Michael's style and wouldn't disturb the workplace atmosphere too much. Since Michael was single and meals during work were mostly delivery, I arranged for someone to cook meals, and when I was present, I even treated everyone to homemade dishes. Since there wasn't a manager-like figure, I took on as many of the daily administrative tasks as possible.
this is amazing. Whenever I request materials, you always provide exactly what I need. And I've had much more time to draw comic.
I was happy to be appreciated like that. Michael's artwork wasn't flashy, but it was incredibly skillful, with a unique worldview and humor that attracted a dedicated fanbase. And I was one of them. Although he was the type who preferred to spend time on intricate details, I thought he must have had a tough time dealing with trivial matters and a shortage of assistants. Perhaps because he had more time and mental space, the popularity of his ongoing series was increasing, and I received praise from the editors as well. One day, Jason said,
We need to talk.
and we made plans to meet for a meal. Was it about marriage? Or maybe it was about breaking up. Either way, I felt it was time to clarify things. However, when I arrived at the agreed-upon restaurant, Jason and Amy were sitting side by side. It was odd because they weren't facing each other. Despite my confusion, I took a seat across from them.
Nancy, I'm pregnant.
She blurted out as soon as I sat down. Huh?
It's Jason's baby.
What? But what about the older man you were dating?
Oh, him. We broke up ages ago.
Amy replied, leaning closer to Jason beside her. But I thought you weren't interested in guys your own age?
I used to think that, but there's no reason to put limits on love.
What? Then Jason spoke up.
I want to start a family with her.
Sure.
Huh?
Whether it's a family or a nudist colony, it's your choice. If that's all you had to say, I'll be leaving now, I said, getting up from my seat.
Wait. I feel bad about this.
Jason exclaimed.
I'm sorry, Nancy.
Amy added. They both said this half-heartedly. Amy's smug expression at that moment made me inexplicably angry. It's fine. You two suit each other, I said. But Jason, with a crestfallen expression, spoke up.
I grew tired of your attitude. Just because you're good at your job doesn't mean you can look down on others.
I didn't mean to, but Jason seemed to feel that way. I wasn't looking down on anyone. It's just a difference in our work ethic. So, you two are a good match, I said before leaving the restaurant. I didn't feel sad. I felt frustrated, not because I lost my beloved fiancé, but because that Amy had stolen a man from me. I think I should have ended things sooner. Remembering Amy's triumphant face made me feel incredibly uneasy. Apparently, Amy plans to continue working even after getting married. While our editorial department doesn't pry into personal matters, most people know that I used to date Jason. Suddenly, there was a change in our status as a couple. People seemed to enjoy gossip like this, and there were all sorts of speculations flying around. I became known as the woman whose fiancé was stolen by a coworker. I don't remember becoming friends with Amy, but she's probably spreading rumors about me left and right.
I knew he was my best friend's boyfriend, but I couldn't help falling in love with him.
She cried, seemingly playing the role of the tragic heroine. No, it wasn't just Amy. Jason also seemed to say something like,
Nancy's attitude toward Amy was terrible. Seeing that made me drift away, and I felt like I had to protect Amy.
Apparently, I'm the unbearable, nasty woman who harassed my former best friend Amy at work, stole the comic artist she was in charge of, and got dumped by my fiancé. Well, considering they know my usual work ethic, I doubt anyone believed all of it. Still, I felt uncomfortable. And I had to face those two every day.
Nancy, I'll give you the wedding invitation. You'll attend as a colleague, won't you?
When Amy handed me the invitation, I made up my mind to quit. I won't be attending as a colleague anymore, I said, handing in my resignation letter prepared by the chief editor. The chief editor tried to persuade me and asked to talk in a separate room. I love this job, and I love the comic artists I'm in charge of. But continuing to work here like this is tough for me, I said to the chief editor. The chief editor then told me,
to be honest, it's more painful to lose you alone than both of them. Can you reconsider?
It's obvious that those two aren't highly regarded. I appreciate your kind words, but I think it'll take some time to rest my mind and body. I declined. I informed the comic artists I was in charge of about my resignation with some treats. They were all disappointed, and one of the artists even said they would like to work together again after their current series ended if I decided to move to another publishing company. Michael thought he was the reason I decided to quit and apologized so much that I felt sorry for him. I was also very happy to work with you, Michael, so I'm really disappointed. I sincerely felt that way. We were doing so well and gaining popularity, so I wanted to help even more. Then Michael said this.
If you don't have plans for your future work, would you mind if I asked you to be my manager?
Huh?
Since you've been in charge, my work has been so much easier. And I've gotten used to it. So I think I can't do without you, Nancy. I'll pay you the same amount as you're getting now. Oh. But if it's too much, I might not be able to afford it.
He was stumbling, but it was a heartfelt invitation. And he was originally one of my favorite comic artists. I'd love to. If you're okay with me, please let me help. And so I became Michael's manager. Michael found out that my salary was much lower than he had expected, but it wasn't a problem. Despite his usual absent-minded demeanor, Michael never compromises when it comes to his manga. Working together, I could see his passion for comic and his love for his own work, which made me admire him even more. Taking over my position as the editor was a male colleague who had mentored me when I was a newcomer.
I never expected Nancy to become a manager. Michael seems to be doing better and better lately, so it makes sense. Keep up the good work. I won't say anything extra, but I'm sure the editorial team will recognize your presence here eventually.
I understood that it's already a small industry, and it didn't bother me. All I wanted to do was create good work with Michael. One day, Michael approached me with excitement.
Hey, Nancy. Lately, the popularity of the female characters has been rising. It's thanks to you. You gave me various advice.
Michael's comic featured incredibly cool male characters, but I felt the female characters lacked depth.
I have no clue about women's psychology, so I'm grateful. This cutesy character. I think she's such an unpleasant girl. But drawing her is fun. And surprisingly, she's popular.
That's true. In comic, a cunning attitude might ironically be refreshing. But in real life, having someone like that around is awful. She's actually modeled after Amy, the previous editor.
Oh. I see. She's the one.
When I mentioned that, Michael burst out laughing like a child.
Isn't this girl modeled after you, Nancy?
No, that's not it. I'm not that cool, and rather the ideal woman.
Is it? I've always thought this character resembled you and found it wonderful. That's why I put so much effort into drawing her.
Huh? I was happy to think that he saw me that way, and I couldn't help but feel excited, wondering what the difference was between that and a confession. Does that mean you think I'm wonderful?
Eh? Did I say that? Oh. I did. Sorry. Is that weird?
He looked apologetic and a bit downcast, which I found cute. Oh, not at all. I love your comic, but I also admire your attitude towards work. I respect and like everything about you. Despite Michael's bear-like appearance, he seemed far more wonderful to me than Jason ever did. The sales of the comic book were excellent, and an anime adaptation was decided. It was featured more in the media, and there were more interviews. As a manager, it was a happy uproar. I had completely forgotten about Jason and Amy, but I had to visit the editorial department for some business. Come to think of it, did they get married? Thinking that, when I arrived at the editorial department, there was Amy, her belly noticeably bigger. Oh, long time no see. I greeted her cheerfully, but she just glanced at me and quickly left. After handing over some legal documents to the chief editor and being invited for tea, we moved to the cafe area.
Man. It's been tough since you left.
The chief editor sighed.
The hitmaker comic artist Amy was in charge of got angry.
What? That artist? Who's stable no matter who's in charge? I was surprised. Apparently, Amy had angered the artist by suggesting,
"Why don't you go digital? Everyone does these days."
I apologized profusely. And now I'm handling it. Amy is just organizing materials. Well, she's not doing that properly either. But we can't fire her just because she's not good at her job. She's all set to take maternity and childcare leave.
With that, the chief editor sighed again.
The reputation of Jason isn't great either. I handed him the veteran comic artist you used to handle. But he keeps comparing himself to you. Complaining that he's not attentive enough or that he's slow at work. And I keep getting complaints.
Saying this, the chief editor dropped his shoulders with disappointment. While I feel sorry for him, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm relieved to hear that the newbies are being taken care of by competent editors. As I was leaving, I passed by the materials room and saw the two of them talking. They weren't working, as usual. Jason noticed me and said with a bitter expression,
"Long time no see. Looks like you're doing well."
"Thanks to you. Things are busy with the anime adaptation confirmed and talks about a game adaptation, but I'm fulfilled." I replied with a smile, to which he clicked his tongue in response. I couldn't believe I was engaged to a man like him. Oh, by the way, I'm marrying Michael. I'll be supporting him as both his manager and partner from now on. I added.
Eh?
Jason exclaimed.
Are you kidding? That artist has been making a ton of money lately.
Amy reacted incredulously. I was surprised she responded to that. Neither of them congratulated me. To top it off, Amy said,
"He was my responsibility. That's unfair."
Saying something incomprehensible. So I decided. decided to tell a little white lie. Well, yes. We're planning to have a grand wedding and reception, and we're thinking of going on a round-the-world honeymoon. We're even considering buying a big house for our new home, I said, showing off a large engagement ring adorned with precious gems. The ring was the only truth, the rest was all made-up lies. Well, they weren't entirely impossible to achieve, though. Seeing Amy's genuinely frustrated expression eased my nerves.
Michael is such a tacky guy. Like a bear, right?
Jason said in frustration. He's truly a small-minded man. He's a wonderfully talented and charming bear. 100 times better than you. I replied truthfully. Well then, farewell. I wish you both happiness, I said as I walked away, leaving behind the sound of the two of them arguing. Later on, it turned out that Amy had been presented with evidence from the wife of the older man she used to date and was being sued for damages. Turns out, her partner wasn't single after all. As for Jason, he mentioned,
the child in her belly might not even be mine.
But you never know until the baby is born. Given that everyone was already giving the lazy and unmotivated couple side-eye, I couldn't help but wonder if they would have an even harder time at the company with such scandals surfacing. But knowing how shameless they are, it's hard to say. Either way, I couldn't imagine a bright and happy future ahead for the two of them.
A luxurious wedding ceremony, reception, world tour, and a big house. Huh? Are we going all out?
Michael said with a laugh after hearing my story. I know you're not comfortable with flashy things in public. The world tour sounds appealing, but I don't want to disappoint the readers by taking a break from the serialization. As for where to live, anywhere will do, I replied.
Got it. How about we take an extended vacation around the world once the current serialization ends?
Michael suggested. That sounds like a plan. Let's take lots of photos for reference, I said.
You really are like a mirror for editors. But from now on, it's okay for you to be a bit more selfish as my wife? Okay?
Michael said. It's amazing how my partner says such things. Just creating a world together in a co-MC makes me happy enough, but I feel like I'll be even happier if I go beyond that. It feels like a miracle.